Today's Tanya, the second day of Sivan, is in Perek Nun Gimel, chapter 53. It's on page 148. The number at the bottom of the page is 280. The Alter Rebbe had finished explaining the meaning of the presence of the Shechina in the first Beis Hamikdash. The Shechina being Malchus Datzilus, as it is revealed in the world, whereas in Torah there is a greater revelation of not only Malchus Datzilus but also of Chachma Datzilus, because Torah is Chachma. And in each of the lower worlds where the Shechina comes, it rests primarily in the Chachma of that world, in the Chabad of the world. Just as it is in the Neshama, as the Alter Rebbe gave the example, that the essence of life for the body rests in the brain. And so it is also in every world that in the brain of the world, in other words, in the attributes of Chabad of the world, that's where the Shechina, which is the life of the world, rests. That's in the first Beis Hamikdash, because in the first Beis Hamikdash there was the Arim with the Luchis, which is the Torah, which is Chabad, and therefore there was the revelation of Chachma Datzilus. What about the second Beis Hamikdash? 3 lines from the top of the page, 148. In the second Beis Hamikdash, in which the Arim and the Luchis were missing, they were never recovered. Amr Rizal, concerning the second Beis Hamikdash, was told that the Shechina was not present there. How could it be that it's a Beis Hamikdash and the Shechina is not present? So the Alter Rebbe explains, Pirush, what does it mean that there was no Shechina? It means only that Madrega Shechina Shahisa Sheira B'Bayis Rishain, the level of Shechina that was present in the first Beis Hamikdash, which, as we said earlier, came to the Beis Hamikdash Shaloi Kederech Ishtalshalus Ha'elameis, in its descent into the physical. It came not through the same chain of worlds as the creation of the world, as the physical creation, because it came directly from Bria, from the world of Bria, from Malchus de Bria, and skipped the worlds of Yetzirah and Asiya. So that level was in the first Beis Hamikdash, but not in the second. Elo b'bayisheni hoysa sheirik derech ishtalshelus v'hiskapshus Malchus Datzilus b'Malchus de Bria. In the second Beis Hamikdash, the way the Shechina came down to the Beis Hamikdash was the way in which all things come down, in the chain of worlds. So first it is clothed in Malchus Datzilus, and then from there to Malchus de Bria, and then the Shechina of Bria clothes itself in Malchus Dat Yetzirah, and the Malchus of Yetzirah clothes itself the Heichal Kedesh Kadoshim Da Asiya, in the Chabad of Asiya, which is the Kedesh HaKadoshim. The Kedesh Kadoshim Da Asiya, he mislabish b'Kedesh Kadoshim Sheba Beis Hamikdash Alamato. The Chabad of Asiya expresses itself. Chachma Dasiya is what was revealed in the physical Beis Hamikdash here on earth. Shar Sabei Hashchina Malchus Di Yetzirah Hamelubeshes BeKeidesh Kadoshim Dasiya. So what was revealed in the Beis Hamikdash is Malchus Di Yetzirah as it is clothed in Chachma Dasiya. So it's not that there was no Shechina present in the Beis Hamikdash. In the second Beis Hamikdash, it means only that instead of having a Shechina that came directly from Malchus de Bria into the physical world, in the second Beis Hamikdash, the Shechina came from Malchus de Yetzirah and expressed itself in Kedesh HaKadoshim of Asiya. And that's what created the Kedesh Kadoshim here in the physical world, the fact that there was a place that was the Holy of Holies. And that's why no one was allowed to enter there. Without Kohen Gadol B'Yom HaKippurim, other than the Kohen Gadol B'Yom HaKippurim, because on that day, and the Kohen Gadol, being on that day, was able to rise to that level of Kedesh Kadoshim of Asiya and was able to go in. since the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. The second Beis Hamikdash, we have another descent in the Shechina. Ein Lil HaKadosh Baruch Hu Beilomei Ela Daladam Mishal Halacha Bilvad. The place of the Shechina is in the place where Halacha is studied. Va'afilu echad sheyesh avesuk b'Torah Shechina imei, and to some degree, even a person who is sitting and studying Torah, not necessarily Halacha, then the Shechina is with him. Kedisa b'brachos perikamo. So there, Pirush Shechina imei. What does it mean there that the Shechina is with him? Here, it's one step lower. The Shechina comes through all the steps of the chain, from Malchus the Atzilus to Malchus the Bria to Malchus the Yetzirah, and even into Malchus of Asiya. Whereas in the second Beis Hamikdash, it came down to Malchus the Yetzirah, but then into Chabad of Asiya. But here in the Daladam Mishal Halacha, the Shechina comes down even into Malchus of Asiya. And why is it this way? It's not only a chesaron and a descent, but it also has its virtue. Kitayag mitzvahs ha-Torah, because the 613 mitzvahs of Torah, which is the Halacha, Ruban kekulon hein mitzvahs maisiyes. Most of them, the vast majority of the mitzvahs, are active mitzvahs. Mitzvahs that involve a physical act. And even those mitzvahs that are performed through speech and thought, as the study of Torah, the benching and the Shema and the davening, which are all performed through speech and machshava. We are told that thinking is not as good as speaking. And in order to fulfill even those mitzvahs, it's not enough to be thinking and intending those things. He has to say it with his mouth. He has to actually form the words. And we also know that the movement of the lips is considered an act. So that even those mitzvahs that are primarily thought and speech, but even they have to be said, and speech is considered an act. So that all mitzvahs in the final analysis are somehow a physical act. The Tayag mitzvahs ha-Torah, and these 613 mitzvahs of Torah, Im Sheva mitzvahs d'Rabbanon, together with the 7 rabbinic laws, the gematria, they add up to Keser. Tov Reish Chof mitzvahs, which spells Keser. And what does Keser mean? Shehu Rotzin ha'Elyon Baruch Hu. Keser is that which is above the head. The head being Chachma, that which is above the head is Rotzin. So that the mitzvahs, the 613 mitzvahs with the 7 mitzvahs d'Rabbanan, are the Rotzin ha'Elyon, make up the divine will, what God wants, and this will is melubish b'Chachma Yisbarich ha'miyuchodes be'erein Sev Baruch Hu b'tachos ha'yichud. And the will is clothed in God's Chachma as it is expressed in the laws of the Torah in the Halacha. And God's will and God's wisdom both are one and united with Him. V'Hashem v'Havayi b'Chachma Yasad Oretz, which is a reference to Torah Shebal Peh din Nafke Michachma Elo Kameshikosa B'Zeya the Abba Yasad Brata, which means Hashem b'Chachma Yasad Oretz. Oretz is a reference to Malchus. So he says that God implanted Chachma in Oretz, Oretz being Malchus, and Malchus is the origin, is the source of Torah Shebal Peh. And as we said earlier, that Malchus is related to Peh, to speech. Torah Shebal Peh comes from Malchus, and it comes and it originates in Chachma Ilah, as it says in the Zayah, the Abba Yasad Brata. That Abba, which is Chachma, Chachma is Av, Abba, is implanted in Brata, in the daughter being Malchus. So that even Torah Shebal Peh is an expression of Chachma Ilah, of God's Chachma, and is one with Him. And now we'll understand what the Yenuka in the Zayas meant when he said that there is a flame burning above the head, which is the Shechina. And in order to keep the Shechina connected to the body, you have to have oil, and the oil is good deeds. That this flame that burns over the head, on top of the head, is shchinta, which is the shchina, is itzrich lemashcha. It has to have oil. Pirush, what does it mean that it has to have oil? It means lehislabish b'chachma hanikra shemen mishchas kedush. It has to be clothed, shchina, in order to connect with the body, has to be clothed in chachma. And chachma is called shemen. Because in one of the questions and one of the difficulties in the statement of the Zohar is that when you say that the shchina needs oil with which to connect to the body, we generally and immediately associate oil with Torah, with chachma. But the Yanuka goes on to say that what is the oil? The good deeds, and not chachma. So the Alter Rebbe explains that it means chachma, that in order for the shchina to be connected to the body, there has to be oil. Pirush, what does oil mean? Chachma. That the shchina has to be clothed in chachma, which is called shemen mishchas kedesh, kameshikosa b'zehar, the inen uvdin tavin. And what does it mean? The good deeds that are the shemen, that are the oil, hein taryag mitzvahs hanimshachas mechachmasa yizbarich. The good deeds are mitzvahs, and mitzvahs come from the chachma, from the Eibishter's chachma. In other words, that part of Torah, which is God's chachma, that is uvdin tavin, the part of Torah that is the halacha, the actions of Torah, which are basically chachma, but also have the advantage of being actions, mitzvahs, that's what brings the shchina into the body. Kedei laches eir hashchina bepsila, hi nefesh hachiyunis, shebeguf hanikras psila derech marshal, to connect the shchina with the wick, which is the animal soul, the natural soul which is in the body, and this soul is called the wick. What is the connection between the animal soul and the wick? And that somehow through the animal soul the shchina is present and connected to the body. So we see in the Mashal and Gashmiyas that when you have a candle, how does the fire burn? It burns through consuming the physical substance of the wick, the hanefeches la'eish, which is transformed into fire. Iskach eir hashchina sheir al nefesh ha'likis al yidei kiloy nefesh habahamis. In the same way, the shchina rests on the godly soul through the consumption of the animal soul by burning it up, by transforming it from darkness to light and from bitterness to sweetness in the process of the animal soul being consumed in godliness. That's what brings the shchina to the godly soul. In one of two ways: either b'tzadikim, where the animal soul becomes transformed into godliness even in its emotions, or at least on the level of the Beinani, al yidei kiloyim levusheha, through the consumption of the garments of the animal soul when they are consumed into godliness. Because in the Beinani it is the garments of the animal soul that become godly and elevated, but not the emotions of the animal soul. So in the tzaddik, where the tzaddik does mitzvahs and has also the emotions of the animal soul involved in the mitzvah, there is certainly the drawing down of the shchina and causing it to rest on the body. Because what causes the shchina to come down and to rest on the body is the fact that the animal soul is being consumed and being transformed into godliness. And that happens through the acts of the mitzvah, through the garments of the animal soul, as we learned earlier. In the tzaddikim, where they have not only the actions and the acts of the mitzvahs and the garments of the animal soul are transformed into godliness, but even the emotion that adds to the holiness and brings the kedusha, brings the shchina into the body and connects it with the animal soul even more than in the Beinani. But in both cases it comes through the garments and through the act. Shehein machshava dibur u'maaseh v'his hapchusa mecheshech haklipes la'er havaya inser baruch hu ha'melu b'shem miyuchad v'machshava dibur u'maaseh teyag mitzvos ha'Torah. In the in the Beinani, the garments of the animal soul, which are thought, speech, and deed, are transformed from darkness of Klippa to the light of godliness, which is clothed and united in the thought, speech, and deed of the Taryag Mitzvahs HaTorah, and that happens in the Beinani because the Beinani is in control of the garments of his animal soul. Why is it that by transforming the animal soul into godliness, as in the example of the consumption of the wick, that's what keeps the Shekhinah present and connected to the body? So he says that through the transformation of the animal soul that comes from Klipas Nega, and its darkness is changed into light, this creates a receptiveness below that causes a drawing down of the Shekhinah from above. It brings the Shekhinah down to be revealed to the godly soul, which is in the brain and the head. So the Rebbe is saying here two things. Where can the Shekhinah express itself, as we've learned until now, that it expresses itself in each world, in the Kodesh HaKadoshim of each world, which is the Chabad of each world. So that Chochmah and Chabad are the Keli into which the Shekhinah can reveal itself. And that is the oil of Chochmah, the oil that keeps the Shekhinah connected to the body. But in addition to the oil being the Keli into which the Shekhinah can be revealed, but what makes the Shekhinah reveal itself, what draws the Shekhinah to the Keli, it is the transformation of the animal soul into godliness. When there is a rising, an arousal below, that causes a return and an arousal above, so that when we raise ourselves up towards God, it brings a revelation of God from above down. That brings the Shekhinah down. And so there are two things. There is stimulating the descent of the Shekhinah, that the Shekhinah should come down and reveal itself, and then there's also the Keli into which it reveals itself. So the Keli is Chochmah, but what stimulates the revelation is our own arousal when we raise ourselves up by the animal soul becoming more godly, either on the level of the Beinani, where it's only the garments, or on the level of the Tzaddik, where in addition to the garments there's also the emotion. That's what stimulates the drawing down of the Shekhinah. What does it mean that God, your God, is a consuming fire? Consuming means that it reveals itself through the consuming of the physical. That when is the fire of God revealed? It is as a result of Eichla, of the fact that the animal soul is elevated, consumed by godliness, and transformed from darkness into light. And so we've come to the conclusion, beginning from the verse on which the Tanya is based, that the Torah says that serving God is a matter that is very natural and close to the average Jew to do, in your mouth and in your heart to do. So in the 53 chapters of the first part of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe basically explained how, by the nature of the godly soul as well as by the nature of the animal soul, to love and fear God is an accessible thing, not unrealistic and not out of reach at all. And it is a great virtue, because it is the way in which we're supposed to do mitzvahs. But at the same time, the emphasis of the pasuk is in your mouth and in your heart, which are the emotions, the love and fear of God. But the important thing is la'aseh, to do, because in the final analysis, the doing of the mitzvah, which is what involves the animal soul, creating a dira b'tachtenim, transforming the darkness into light, that's what brings the Shekhinah to the world, and that's what makes the world a dira b'tachtenim. Nishlam chelik rishim be'ezes Hashem yisbarech v'yisala. In today's Hayom Yom, the second day of Sivan, the Rebbe writes that in the year 1829, the Shabbos of Parshas Bamidbar came out on Hey Sivan. And before lighting the candles for Shabbos, the Tzemach Tzedek, before the candle lighting of Shabbos, the Tzemach Tzedek gave a maimer, said the maimer, Se'u es reish avesam, and following the interpretation of Even Ezra, he interpreted the word Se'u in the sense of elevation, of raising it up, as in Kisisa es reish. And the meaning of it was that through the Aveda of that part of the neshama that is within the body, by working with that part of the neshama that is in the body, we can bring an elevation, we can raise up the essence of the neshama as it is above and higher than the body. And he then explained a number of Torah verses and statements in Zohar and Medrash. At noon on Shabbos, the Rebbe said another maimer, the Erastich, and he gave an elaboration on it as well, and they are printed in Likutei Torah. The next day, which was the first day of Shavuos, he said the maimer Sfartem, with its elaboration, and they are printed also in Likutei Torah. And during the Yom Tov meal on the second day of Shavuos, the Rebbe delivered the maimer V'Hachachmam Ayin Temotzei, which appears in Likutei Torah as the second elaboration, the second beer on the subject of Tispuru Chamishim Yom.